Hello everyone, this is Emily speaking from Couch English, channel dedicated to practical business English. As you already probably know, if I share any information, I try to do my best to deliver to you both something what is connected with English and of course the practical aspects of the language, but also different kind of the processes, different kind of the trends, and different kind of popular terms which are used in business also in practice. That's how I can combine both of my fields in which I have my expertise. So the field of business, obviously, and of course the one connected with teaching English. Today, I decided to concentrate on the topic of feedback, which is in fact one of my beloved topics, definitely. But I decided to concentrate on that topic from a little bit different perspective. A lot really is said about feedback from the point of view how to provide it, how to share it, how to use different kind of professional methods of, again, giving and providing feedback. But I would say that it is just one part of the equation. Because on one hand, of course, we need to take our accountability for the way how we provide feedback, for the methods that we apply, for the way how we are even prepared to share feedback, but still it is just 50% of the accountability that we can take. There is not only one person in sharing feedback, but there are definitely at least two sides. The person sharing the feedback and usually also the person to whom the feedback is of course being shared. And most typically, as I can observe, not so much is being said about the ways how we can accept feedback, but also what is difficult and why it is challenging to accept that feedback if it is given to us even in the most professional form as it is possible. So let's concentrate today on accepting feedback. And I believe that it would be worth to start from the reasons why it can be challenging to accept feedback. And I would say that the most important part here, the most significant one, is connected with the fact that quite often our brain interprets feedback as a form of attack. And why does it happen that way? It's like impossible. We should say, especially if we know that again, somebody who is sharing the feedback does it in the most professional and most proper way, following different kind of the guidelines, for example, accepted during the trainings and workshops. Well, the thing is that our brain is quite tricky. And what happens, for example, when the feedback is being given to us is that it really interprets. Again, just interprets, it's not true. It doesn't have to be true. It just interprets feedback as a form of attack. So in reality, what can happen is that some particular gesture, behavior, sound is going to be interpreted by our brain as a trigger, or it is going to have that form of a trigger, which is going to give that kind of the signal to our brain, there is a threat, there is a risk. And obviously, if we are in some stressful, threatening, frightening situation, we don't have the possibility to react in constructive, professional way. If there is an attack, of course, interpretations of the attack, but if there is the attack according to our brain, well, we have to do something, we have to react. We have to, for example, defend ourselves. So there is no place for a dialogue, there is no place for constructive criticism, there is no place for discussion or negotiations. We have to act very quickly. And that's the problem, because again, very often the person who is going to share the feedback is going to have that kind of idea in their mind. Everything by me is given very professionally. I prepared myself. I know what to say. I know also what not to say during this conversation. So come on, what is happening that the second party, that my interlocutor, is behaving in that way? It doesn't make any sense. But yes, it does, because again, this is just about the brain and its interpretation. So it can even happen that, for example, let's say my boss is going to call me and there will be like just a very short message, call and saying, please come to my office. Even the tone of voice, the behavior of the boss is going to be proper. Please come to my office. But the thing is that that particular sentence is going to be again interpreted by my brain as that trigger, as the risk, as something what is interpreted again. I know I'm abusing a little bit that word, but I just want to really underline it, which is going to be treated as the form of the attack. And then I'm going to that office, but in fact, I'm not going there to talk on some kind of mutual level, not to discuss it, but I'm already under strong emotions because that one particular sentence was interpreted by my brain as a form of the attack. Or it can even happen that I'm going to enter the office of my superior and that person is going to have their, for example, eyebrow raised. And just having a look at the facial expression of that person, I'm going also to interpret it as a form of threat, risk, or something very stressful. And automatically, I will react not in a rational way. The thing is that we have there something in our brain, like, for example, the reptile and mammal brain, and they are responsible for our automatic and also learned responses. So it can happen that when I'm going to interpret some gesture, some behavior as something what is threatening me, what I will do at the first glance is that I'm going to react with my body. And I have three possible reactions, as you can see them here. It can be flight, fight, or freeze. So if it happens that my boss is calling me, telling me, come to my office, the first thing which I'm going to feel, it will be the reaction of my body. And that's the reaction which is initiated by the reptile brain. So, for example, I will feel trapped. My body will be restless. I will feel numbness in my arms or legs. I will have shallow breath. So in that situation, if my body reacts like that, I'm not able to think constructively because everything is right now tense. After that, of course, the emotions will come, different ones. But let's say if I follow that first one reaction, if I follow that flight reaction, most probably I will feel anxiety. I will feel fear. And again, it's difficult to react in constructive way if there are that kind of the emotions. If first there are that kind of the reactions of the body followed by those emotions. So unfortunately, it won't be possible for me to think in quite constructive way. The thing is that those reactions, which are automatic, which are also learned because we follow these reactions. It doesn't happen just once. Of course, once it can occur that I will just react in automatic way, but most typically I have those reactions being repeated and repeated. So once my boss is calling me, come to my office, and then it can be the first reaction like that I will, for example, feel this numbness or whatever else in my body, and of course the anxiety. But then another situation very similar. So for example, even my second boss, like the new boss in the new company is going to call me saying exactly the same. My brain already remembers the previous situations, my previous reactions, and it is just going to repeat them. So it will be something what is going to be continued, perpetuated sometimes even. And it means that what can trigger my brain is the fact that I do not have impact on time, place where the feedback is being given, and a decision. Do I want right now to talk with my boss or maybe not? So I have no impact. And probably, I believe so, you would agree with me that as people, we really like having impact. And if we don't, come on, it is just unfair. So that's one thing. If we don't have impact on time, place, the decision, do you want to talk with me or not, then in that case, it's much easier to treat the feedback as something what is not going to be accepted. And in that case, of course, we're not going to behave professionally. The other thing is that we simply have bad experiences from the past. Because maybe in my current company, if my superior is going to call me, telling me, come to my office, please, the person has really very positive intentions. And all the previous conversations, they were like really very positive from the point of view of that person. But I simply have very bad experiences from my previous company. And my brain still remembers that whenever it happened that my former superior was calling me and asking me to come to the office, unfortunately, the conversation wasn't pleasant. And there were some kind of implications resulting, not positive ones, of course, resulting from this conversation. So I have bad experiences. That's why even in the new circumstances, in the new environment, I can at the very beginning react in exactly the same way, still not constructive, of course. The other thing, still related also to that mutuality and impact, is that there is no partnership, because quite often, even I'm right now giving you the examples, telling about boss, boss, superior, superior. So the situation when there is definitely the downward feedback. So the person on the higher position is providing feedback to somebody having the lower position. And it doesn't have to be like that, because feedback simply should be conversation. It should be a dialogue. And then automatically we even perceive it in a different way. Feedback, we can have it encoded in our mind that it is just one-sided. Superior providing feedback to their employees. And of course not, because feedback is any kind of conversation when we're sharing, for example, the experiences or relating to the behavior of the other person or relating to the performance of the other person or to expectations that we have. And it doesn't have to be connected with that simple situation when, again, the superior is sharing the feedback with the employees. It can be any other relationship, of course. But as long as feedback is going to be one-sided, there is no partnership, which means that we don't have exactly the same positions. Automatically, it makes me being like somehow subordinate and the second person being, of course, superior. So there is no balance, there is no partnership. And of course, it means that unfortunately, I'm not going to feel fair, even subconsciously, and then accepting feedback will be much more difficult. The same thing is connected with balance related to preparation, because most typically the person who wants to share the feedback, that will be the person who assigns themselves time for preparation. So it can happen that even my colleague is going to call me and ask me for a moment of conversation. And in the meantime, this person already knows the topic of the conversation. The person already prepares themselves to have a conversation with me. And I'm entering the room. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. So I didn't have time to prepare myself. So I'm pretty surprised. And then, of course, automatically, I will feel it is simply unfair. Somebody had time to prepare themselves to a conversation. I didn't have this possibility, so attack. And again, well, I have to do something to protect myself, obviously. The other thing is that what matters a lot is definitely the way feedback is and used to be provided to us. And here, again, I can be quite resistant if it is about the feedback shared by somebody with me. Because, for example, I remember that for many, many years, my, for example, former managers or any other person, they were sharing feedback following that formula of sandwich feedback. I can also add here that if it is about the Polish market, it was pretty popular for many years that most of the managers, they were applying that particular form of feedback. So the sandwich one, something at the beginning positive, then negative, and again positive. And I know that for certain cultures and even for certain people, that method is great because we don't say something very directly. We don't talk only about the negatives, but we also add something what we appreciate, not only something that should be improved. So again, for some people and even for some cultures, that form of the feedback is perfectly okay. Although if it is about other types of the people who need a little bit different form of sharing the feedback, and also certain cultures. And to some extent, I would say it is really about the Polish culture. Well, let's say that we don't appreciate that feedback, but also because for so many years, that particular type of the feedback was extremely popular. And then it might happen that if somebody is going to use that method, talking with me, or even if somebody's going to start sharing with me only the positive feedback, only appreciative feedback, I will be really awaiting some hidden agenda. Because in my experiences, always the sandwich feedback was shared. So even if somebody wants to give me something positive and share the appreciation, I will not even hear it, because all the time I will be awaiting, where is this negative information? Where is it? Or again, on the other hand, because for so many years I used to hear only that kind of the feedback, I know that, okay, I don't appreciate it. For me, it's not authentic. So that's why it will be difficult for me to accept it. That's the case about feedback. I know that we have plenty of methods, plenty of techniques connected with providing feedback. But what is important, in my opinion, is that always the method, or rather maybe the way of providing feedback, it should be tailored to the second person needs, personality, and even the moment. So instead of learning how to provide feedback, I would even say it's much better just to ask somebody, how would you like me to provide feedback with you? How would you like me to share it with you? And asking about that not only once, because on some declarative level, we can say, oh, no, you can just be very direct. Just tell me what you don't like, and that's it. I'm going to accept it. Because, well, at the very beginning, when we start collaboration, I will feel embarrassed to say that generally accepting criticism, especially, is very difficult for me. Or on the other hand, I think that it's okay, but with time it will occur, no, it's not. So probably it is going to be the best if somebody is going to, of course, initially starting collaboration, ask me, how would you like me to share with you feedback? And then after some time, repeat that question again. Just come back to that to check if we're still on the same page, to update the information about my needs and the right moment, of course. So that's about personal and tailored approach. And of course, there are several other reasons why we do not accept feedback. It can be about lacking the goal and sense. So somebody talks with me, and in fact, I have no idea about what's the topic, what is the expectation of that person, what outcome this person requires. So I'm just sitting, listening, but in fact, I have no idea where we are striving for. And in that case, if somebody is going even to explain to me, we are meeting here because, or I would like to talk with you tomorrow about something, my intention is to, or what I expect after this conversation is. So just giving me some clarification about the goal, about the outcome, but also intentions. Because that's again another reason why it can be difficult to accept feedback, because we suspect, we are suspicious that generally the intentions of the other people, they are not the best ones. So it can happen that somebody in reality has very positive intentions. They really want to share with us everything what is possible to, for example, develop ourselves. But it won't happen. So in that case, even sometimes when we're going to tell to the other people, my intention is to, and sometimes we have to repeat it, we're going to name these intentions. Because again, that's the idea of the intentions. Or the result, maybe I should rather say, the intentions are not visible. Other people will see my behaviors, but they don't see my intentions. So as long as I don't name them and I don't express them, well, they have no idea what I want. So my intention during this meeting is to something. And the other thing is that it can happen that we are simply not ready to talk, for example, today. Because generally, yes, of course, it's important to share feedback, accept feedback, share feedback, accept feedback, have dialogues, conversations, and so on. But on the other hand, it can really occur that today is simply not my day. I had like difficult morning. I was experiencing a lot of very challenging tasks within the last week. So simply today, I'm not ready to accept feedback, which is going, of course, to be connected with that improvement feedback. No, I'm not ready. And then in that case, if somebody is going to ask me, is it the right moment to talk about something? And I will say, well, if it is only possible, can we reschedule for tomorrow? Sure. I have impact, and tomorrow I will have much better day, and it means I can talk. And the other thing, which is connected to some extent with that sandwich feedback that I mentioned, is our individual capacity. There are people with whom we can speak very directly, even if it is not going to be fully constructive, because simply I can come to somebody and say, come on, again, that mistake, just do something with that. It's not constructive, but for my interlocutor, it's going to be acceptable because simply that person's individual capacity of accepting information is much higher than, let's say, the average. There are also the people who will accept the mark. So, of course, I can share with them some negative feedback, improvement feedback, but let's say the level of that message and information which I'm going to share, it can't be that high. So if there are like few aspects that I would like to share with somebody, and all of them are unfortunately negative, connected with some mistakes, neglection, and so on, well, I have to be careful. And it's also about the thimble. And in that case, probably that sandwich feedback is going to be perfectly okay. Because for some people, listening, for example, to feedback is already difficult. And then if I want to share few things, few aspects connected with that negative behaviors or performance, probably it will be again challenging. And in that case, sandwich. So the things which I really appreciate about that person, and one tiny thing that can require improvement, it's gonna be something what will be just easier to accept. And there is one more thing connected with feedback. So apart from our brain and those natural reactions, those triggers, which sometimes from the external point of view are not clear and understood, there is something what is very, very similar to the idea connected with introduction of changes. Because usually when changes are being introduced, our first reaction is rather also not positive. And probably some emotions, they will emerge. Exactly the same will happen here. So if somebody wants to talk with me, and if somebody wants to share feedback with me, most probably my first reaction, shock and surprise, especially when I wasn't given that time for preparation. So somebody is calling me, can you come to my office? I'm entering the office. The person starts sharing feedback about my performance, about my behavior, and I'm not prepared. I have no idea about the topic of the conversation. Of course, when we start, then I know, but earlier I haven't been informed about it. So I'm surprised, I'm shocked, and it will be my reaction. I'm just standing, what? What are we even talking about? So it will be also quite natural that my second reaction, it will be anger, but on the other hand, it can be also anxiety, depending also on those natural reactions. Because of course, if shock happened, there is no partnership, there is no impact which I had. Well, obviously, the emotions which I'm going to experience, they're not going to be positive. And after that initial anger, we're still under emotions. It's difficult to be constructive and professional. Probably the resistance will happen because, come on, is there anybody who admires criticizing? Well, maybe, but I personally don't know that person. So probably the resistance will happen, and only then, if of course the feedback is provided in professional way, I can bounce a little bit. Maybe the acceptance will happen, and I will say, well, in fact, yes. Not necessarily acceptance means that I agree. It's just that I'm open to accept feedback. Still, I can have different opinion. Still, I can disagree, but at least I'm able to react in constructive, logical, rational way, not under emotions. And of course, if it is about the example, let's say that if my first reaction is shock, then I can simply say, what? I made a mistake. Anger? Come on. I made that mistake because you delivered me the data too late. Then the resistance. So let's say I'm already stepping back a little bit, but not fully. And I'm just going to say, well, okay, but nobody's perfect. Everybody can make mistakes. And only then, depending how the situation is going to be managed by that second person as well, I can say, well, okay, so I need to correct that data. Or finally, I can move further to that situation when we see the collaboration, when we see the synergy, and I can concentrate on hope and help, asking somebody, okay, so can you help me redesign my priorities? Because if it really happens that I made some kind of mistake, I need to change something in my tasks. And without your support, I won't be able to do it. Or on the other hand, it can also occur that I will react with the anxiety. So when somebody is going to call me and tell me, come on, come to my office, then I can say, oh no, what is going to happen now? So I'm gonna probably feel this anxiety and fear. And then, of course, step by step, this resistance will most probably happen as well. And I was, I'm not able to manage with such pressure, so many tasks, I can't do it. And finally, of course, again, bouncing, I will move to acceptance. I will move maybe to some kind of support, which I need from somebody to be able to change something or improve something in my behavior or the performance. So those particular steps, they can really happen. But of course, what we can do as people who provide the feedback is to minimize that emotional reactions in terms of shock and anxiety. Because even giving people that possibility to prepare themselves to the conversation, it can really change a lot. Or even if we're going to accept the fact that people have different kind of capacity, and what we need to do is that we need to, of course, let them choose even what particular way of providing feedback is acceptable. That's going to change really a lot. So let people have impact on the conditions where or when feedback can be provided. Let them have this feeling that they have also partnership and mutuality of contribution. So if we, as people providing feedback, if we are giving time to ourselves, if it is about preparation, let it be the same. If we talk, let's give the voice to the other person as well, because I'm providing the feedback, but I want to see your perspective as well. So let there be this mutuality of conversation, of taking the voice as well. Let's ask somebody, how would you like me to share with you feedback? And the last thing, which is also going to be important, is about being ready for the fire exits, which means that we need to accept that from time to time, people will be not ready to receive feedback, and that's okay, it can happen. Or even if we're already during the meeting, which is going to be quite tough, there should be that moment that we can say, okay, let's stop for a moment, let's take a break, and maybe we can just come back to that conversation tomorrow. So it will be really important to remember about that things this time as a person who provides the feedback. And the last thing which I would mention today, thinking about accepting that feedback and providing feedback as well, is also connected with the way how we personally sometimes treat some situations in the area of feedback. Because what can happen is that we are going to perceive some particular situation very personally, which means that most probably anger is going to take charge. Because for example, superior is going to give me feedback, but somehow if it is about our relationship, it's not the best. Maybe, unfortunately, I don't treat that person as my authority. And then just because of our personal relationship, it will be difficult to accept feedback. And it can happen that my superior is sharing feedback with me and the other person exactly in the same way, exactly in the same professional way, but still I will not accept it because of this personal relationship. The other person, yes. Or Sharing feedback can be also connected with providing some information about my identity, what I think about myself. And here it can also happen that some particular type of the feedback or part of the feedback is going to be difficult to accept because I'm making some assumptions about myself. I perceive myself in a certain way. And again, it can happen that in one situation, somebody is going to share with me feedback and my reaction perfectly, let's say, stable, professional. Another situation, not. Because let's say in the first case, I made some kind of the mistake, and that's okay for me because I accept the fact that I make mistakes. In the second situation, I didn't deliver something on time. And let's say that in my mind, I'm very professional and I always stick to time. So in that case, it will be very difficult to accept that particular feedback because I need to change thinking about myself. Oh, I'm not professional. And for me, timing is very strongly connected with professional approach. So sometimes because of some personal relationship, I can't accept feedback. And sometimes because it reveals something about me, it will be even much more challenging to accept the feedback. Thank you very much for today. I hope that you enjoyed that. And of course, if only you want, you can follow us. If it is about YouTube, you can also check our channels. Thank you very much.